Hey everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Smoke and Mirrors, the series where I talk about the games I'm playing when not making YouTube videos, and then make YouTube videos about them. In this episode, I want to go back to the February 2019 case study Horizon Zero Dawn by Guerilla Games. It was a long journey from original vote by patrons to getting those videos out to y'all to watch. Around 45 hours of gameplay before I felt I was even ready to take the footage I had and put it all together. It was a weird process whereby I wanted to explore as much of the game as possible before starting to make the video, given the authenticity of having played and experienced the games I report on is very important to me. At the time of recording this video, I've completed the main story, completed around half of the Frozen Wilds DLC expansion and the vast majority of collectibles and side missions, totaling around 60 odd hours of playtime. As such, I've managed to get a pretty solid understanding of the game's strengths, some of its failings and weaknesses, and what makes the game probably my favourite PlayStation title I've played to date. If you're not familiar, Horizon Zero Dawn takes place in a post-apocalyptic North America where humanity now exists merely as tribes spread out across a lush and plentiful landscape. However, these lands are dominated by mechanical animals referred to as the Machines in classic sci-fi fashion. These machines are of varying sizes, each with their own unique behaviours and actions, and can operate either individually or in herds. You take control of Aloy, an outcast of the local Nora tribes who goes through the process of passing the trials of the people who shunned her to attaining their respect in more ways than one, all the while searching the lands not just for those who wronged her and those close to her, but also the mysteries of her past and where she comes from. The actual story of the game was quite fun, even though by virtue of researching for the game I actually spoiled the ending for myself. Though I will say I found the main plot thread of Aloy's past far more engaging than a lot of the story parts regarding turf wars between factions in and around the likes of Mother's Heart and Meridian. Aesthetically, it's a lovely approach to the post-apocalyptic setting, one that I haven't seen achieved quite as well since probably Enslaved Odyssey to the West, which was a fantastic game that I really need to replay at some point. It creates this rich and fascinating world for artists to construct, and the mishmash of occasional old world technology that either merges with or scars the landscape can be pretty breathtaking and haunting. It's one of the most visually gorgeous games I've ever seen, and the landscapes have this surreal yet serene quality to them. It acts as a nice counterweight to Ghost Recon Wildlands, which also had gorgeous looking vistas but was very much grounded in reality. In general, I also like the writing and notably the character development of Aloy. I actually really liked Aloy as a character. She's competent, sarcastic, and doesn't take shit off anyone. She's presented as a warrior in strength of body but also character, a fortitude she really needs when you consider all the crap that comes her way. It's a pretty fascinating story once you get to the bottom of it, when you start thinking of the systemic levels of oppression levelled at her throughout her entire life. There's some rather cathartic moments in the closing hours of the game as the plot thread regarding the Nora begins to wrap up. She stands against those who have effectively gaslighted her throughout her whole life by virtue of their ridiculous religious ideology. Put that in contrast of how she's treated virtually everywhere else in the game world, where she's actually often dismissed initially, given she comes across as one of the same Nora that have dismissed her much of her life, and it tells this all too familiar tale of growth and venturing out into the world, fraught with peril but finding your value. It really spoke to me on a couple of occasions and found it pretty powerful. All that said, the talking heads of the story segments, largely driven by a narrative animation system, felt a little broken. Discussions are always in a kind of static standing position and could benefit from allowing for more dynamic positioning of characters, akin to, say, Mass Effect. Plus, it really exposed two interesting art choices. First of all, Aloy's hair, that seems to behave like Spider-Man Noir's coat, and then also, everyone's teeth are immaculate. They all have such great dental, plus all the materials used in the teeth have this shader that give them this overt sheen that made me feel like everyone was sloshing sugar water in their mouth when off camera. It was weird! The conversation cameras are just one of a number of systems throughout the game that feel like they're just not quite there yet. A system driven by a misguided design decision or a belief that it will garner a fun gameplay experience that I personally just didn't resonate with. The melee combat takes a lot of getting used to. I'll come back to the combat in a minute. The inventory system and modifications feels awkward as it's spread across UI screens, and the climbing, if I had one real beef with this game that I would dedicate time to moaning about, is that the climbing mechanics are frustrating as hell. Sometimes it works, other times it doesn't, and a lot of the time a totally climbable surface is hard for me to spot on a cliff face. It's funny given I just recently finished playing Shadow of the Tomb Raider, since while that game in its series has a lot of issues I struggle with, the one thing it does very well is clearly communicate to you the walls and surfaces in proximity that are interactable and the specific interactions you need to make them work. it makes for this fun real-time puzzle solving as you try to traverse a crevice that uses numerous surface types, and it strikes me that Horizon really needs that to make the climbing interesting. However, in saying all that, it doesn't detract from the core experience of the game, and all of this feels like systems that will be innovated upon in the inevitable sequel. So yeah, the core of this game is the main combat loop of hunting and eliminating the machine animals. One of the most interesting aspects of this is how steep some of the difficulty curves are. Even from the very beginning, just running over and beating up a Watcher or Strider just doesn't work. You need to use the environment to your advantage, scan enemies with your focus, and then attack with your ranged weaponry. It's one of the most effective uses of a bow and arrow in a game I can think of, given you need to learn the best weapons to equip for a given machine, the correct ammo types, and also attempt to strategize in advance of a machine or entire herd catching on to your presence. The one issue with that was that I felt it wasn't abundantly clear what I was meant to be doing with certain weapons in specific contexts. I eventually figured out what weapons work best in certain situations and how to build my strategy against ever-increasing herd sizes. All of this combined with the AI of the game, which you should know all about because you've watched my videos already, haven't you? Yeah? Great. I mean, I don't have much more to add on the AI front. It's a fun and interesting system. My one caveat is that it feels that the one thing it's missing is the opportunity to have machines more actively wander the game world. This makes more sense to me for the likes of the larger machines and even some of the herds, to not be static herds, but actually migrate around the game map. I can see this being something they explore in a sequel as part of the collective system. Coming back to the combat, the increased difficulty lends to an overwhelming satisfaction upon eliminating certain enemy types for the first time, as well as ever more diverse herd configurations. I fondly remember my first Sawtooth, my first herd of behemoths, and of course, the first Stormbird and Thunderjaw. I used the footage of my first Thunderjaw fight in the case study videos because that is one of my strongest memories of the entire game. I'd avoided facing them for so long and then finally went for it, and that first fight took me around 20 minutes, but it was exhilarating. Same with my first Stormbird, which is also in the case study footage, which just had this epic quality to it. It's immensely satisfying when you get the upper hand and take them down. But I have to say the big wow moment for me came during my first Stalker battle. There's a region just south of Meridian where they hide out, and that first time you find them skulking around, camouflaged in the shadows, was just fantastic. That moment of panic I had, having been led into a kill zone, no pun intended, and then pounced on from different angles. God, I really need to find the time to go make that AI dinosaur game I really want to make. Anyone want to crowdfund me to the tune of, I don't know, £250,000? No? Okay, just need a lot more Patreon donations, I guess. Yeah, I think that more or less sums up my feelings on Horizon Zero Dawn. There's a lot of game here to get your teeth into, and given how you can now pick up the Game of the Year edition for like £20 or $30, it's a sound purchase for any PS4 owners out there. I'm curious to how others felt about this game, given I actually don't know that many people in my own social circles who played it, in part because a lot of my friends game on PC and or Xbox. Next month's episode is already locked in, given it resurfaced on Xbox Game Pass and I felt compelled to go back and actually play it to completion. We're going to be talking about Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you are too. In the meantime, thanks for watching Smoke and Mirrors. Sign up to the AI and Games Patreon to watch these episodes early. Go on! You know you wanna. And you can be on this list of fun and awesome names right here. See yous all later, have a good one, bye bye.